All right, we're plugged in, ready to go. Hoping we got the audio working. Hoping everybody's tuned in and can hear us here on the live stream on a Tuesday night. Had to switch things up and go live on Tuesday night since Pitt's got a basketball game on Wednesday night. Forget if I said we were going to do that. Let's see if I can clear a little bit of a fogginess there on the camera, but I forget if we made this plan in advance. Should have known. Pitt having a basketball game on Wednesday night, 9 o'clock against Virginia at the Peterson Events Center. Decided we should go live here on Tuesday night. So here we are for the weekly Panther-Lair Show. It's January 18th, 2022. People rolling in, hoping people are joining the live stream here. We got a lot to talk about this week. I mean, we have a lot to talk about every week. We already got super chatters jumping in. Already got people heading into the live stream chat, which is always fun. But there's always a lot to talk about, certainly with the basketball team, fresh off a win over Louisville. We'll see what they can do against Virginia on Wednesday night. The ACC looking like a not very daunting conference, not a real challenge to deal with. The ACC right now, and maybe some opportunities for Pitt to have some success as they go through the rest of this schedule, sitting at 7-10 overall, 2-4 in the conference. There are some opportunities that are out there, and so we're going to talk about that. And one question that I have about Pitt basketball that I want to get into in a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the stuff with the football team, some of the skill players, because I've been thinking about that a lot this week. Talk about transfers a lot because they just got another transfer over the weekend, and so we'll get into that conversation as well. I'll tell you right off the bat about home field, because it's a good thing to kind of talk about when we start. Homefieldapparel.com. I got my Rainbow Warriors sweatshirt on right here, my Hawaii sweatshirt. Shout out to Todd Graham for quitting on another job. That's at least you got fired from Arizona State. You quit on Rice. You quit on Tulsa. You quit on Pitt. You resigned from Hawaii, but let's be honest. I mean, you resigned in disgrace from Hawaii. So that's I don't know if we count that or not. You got 3 quitting, and officially you resigned from Hawaii. So anyway, that's a sidebar. I'm here to talk about home field. Homefieldapparel.com. When it gets warmer out, I'll have my the Pitt shirts on, the warm up the Victory Lights shirt, the retro rock shirt. They're awesome. The t-shirts, they're super soft. They're great t-shirts, great logos. They feel great. This is the sweatshirt, and the Hawaii logo is awesome. You can get all the Pitt logos on their sweatshirts. The quality, though, I mean, it's hard to find a great hoodie. Home Field has great hoodies. They have great t-shirts. It's homefieldapparel.com is the place you want to go. You go to homefieldapparel.com. You look at their Pitt collection. And you're not going to be disappointed. You're going to be like, these are awesome. I need a few of these. And if you're a first-time shopper there, you use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Look, it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a Pitt fan. Football is coming off their most successful season in 40 years. Pitt basketball may be, and we can say this in the wake of a win, showing some signs of life. You are excited to be a Pitt fan again, right now, at this very moment on January 18th. So go get some sweet Pitt gear from homefieldapparel.com. Go look at their Pitt collection. Remember, like I said, on your first order, you can get 15% off if you use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R. Of course, Lair is part of Panther-Lair. That's the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. I know you can find a lot of information and things on Twitter. I know you can find a lot of content on Twitter, but the reality is there's things on Panther-Lair.com you're not going to find on Twitter, because not everything is on Twitter these days. It's crazy to think that, but not everything's on Twitter. You'll find some things on Panther-Lair.com that you won't find on Twitter. You'll get it on Panther-Lair.com before you get it on Twitter. So if you just rely on Twitter, maybe eventually you'll get everything, but there are going to be things you don't get there, and there are going to be things you have to wait a long time to get. You can get it on Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All the content, football, basketball, recruiting, and of course, the message boards where you can talk about all these things. So we pump out a bunch of articles every day, whether it's news updates or interviews or analysis, and then you can go to the message boards and talk about it with hundreds and thousands, literally, of other Pitt fans. I mean, what more can you ask for if you are a Pitt fan? That's the place you want to be. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Panther-Lair.com. Now let's start off right off the bat with some super chatters. Just because Michael B is one of our regular super chatters, and he jumped in as a super chatter before the show even started. So normally I'd talk for a little while. I got some topics I want to hit before we get started, get into the comments and questions in the live stream. But Michael B is going to be a super chatter before the show even starts. So I'm going to take your comment right now, buddy. A couple of questions, actually. If you want to be a super chatter, make sure your question or comment gets answered or responded to. And click that little dollar sign down there, support the podcast, and we'll make sure we get to whatever you want to say. We'll we'll react to your comments, we'll answer your questions, whatever it is you're looking for. Michael B says, "Hi Chris, a few questions for you. 1, do you think Kenny Pickett is a franchise quarterback in the NFL? 2, is Jeff Capel coaching his way off the hot seat? Because aside from the second half of the Syracuse game, Pitt hasn't looked that bad." Thanks. Number 1, and Michael B, thanks to you right off the bat for being a super chatter. Appreciate that. Is Kenny Pickett a franchise quarterback in the NFL? So that's a great question. That's a great question, particularly as we move further into the run up to the draft. You know what I mean? As we get closer to the draft, you start heading toward the NFL draft combine, you get into pro days, and you're going to have a lot of pre-draft content. There's going to be a lot of mock drafts. There's going to be a lot of rankings, and you see, you're already seeing it. It's not even something we have to wait for. There's a new mock draft that comes out every day, and Kenny Pickett gets mentioned in different places. Almost all of them have him in the first round. Some have him in the top half of the first round. Some have him in the top 10 of the draft. Some have him in the top 5. Beyond the draft, though, is he a franchise quarterback? This is Michael B's question. And, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. And this is not, I don't say that as a knock on Kenny or a way to express concern about Kenny. The reality is I've seen plenty of guys that I thought, well, that's a franchise quarterback or that's not a franchise quarterback, and I've been wrong about them. You know what I mean? I've been wrong. There have been guys that I've seen before the draft and I've said that is or is not a franchise quarterback, and I've been wrong about it. There have been guys that I've seen after the draft and I say that is or is not a franchise quarterback, and I've been wrong about it. There have been guys who have been rookies and I say that is or is not a franchise quarterback, and I've been wrong about it. You know what I mean? Guys develop, guys grow, or they don't develop and they don't grow. And it's hard to project. It's hard to project if you're just random guy sitting out here looking at it. I think there's a lot to like about Kenny Pickett. I think he throws the ball really well. Obviously his mobility is a strength. He can get out and move around and keep a play alive. I think he improved a lot in his pocket presence and his ability to see the field and read defenses. I think it was night and day from 2020 to 2021. I really do. I think he was significantly better in 21 than he was in 20. He was cooler in the pocket. He was calmer in the pocket. Like I say, I think he felt the pressure better. I think he saw the pressure better. I think he responded to the pressure better than he had in 2020 or at any point in his career, really. And, all those things I think can translate. I think they can. But will he be a franchise quarterback? I don't know. If all those things translate, sure, I guess so. Because that's a great recipe for a starting quarterback. Now, there are a lot of things that are going to go into the success of a quote-unquote franchise quarterback. If you get drafted into a trash organization with a lousy roster, I'm not sure how much I like your chances. If you go to the Raiders, and I don't know if Kenny Pickett would end up at the Raiders, he would have to fall. I think he would have to fall below what a lot of projections have him at. Unless the Raiders have like an early pick or something like that. I feel like the Raiders are one of those teams that are always moving their picks around. But if you end up at the Raiders, do I like his chances of having success there? I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best organization. Now, if he goes, and I'm not the first person to say this, but if he goes to New Orleans and works with Sean Payton, well, I think that might be a good place to go. Denver gets talked about a little bit. There was some suggestion when like Luke Getsy was being talked about as a candidate for the Broncos. I don't know if anything developed in the last 12 or 24 hours about that, but there was a suggestion that they're trying to maybe get somebody who's worked with Aaron Rodgers to try and get Aaron Rodgers there. If somehow that situation came together and the Broncos ended up with Aaron Rodgers and they drafted Kenny Pickett to work for a year or two or whatever, maybe not more than 2, but drafted Kenny Pickett to work for 2 years under Aaron Rodgers, and then Rodgers retires and Pickett steps in. I don't think that's the worst situation. That might be a pretty good situation for him, actually. Like some of the offensive weapons they have at a place like Denver. A lot of it's going to come down to the situation. You don't want to end up in a bad situation, where your strengths can't really be maximized and some of your weaknesses are going to be exacerbated. I worry a little bit about Kenny Pickett taking hits in the NFL. Mobility is part of his strength. Getting out and running is part of his strength. You don't want him taking too many shots, though. He's shown that, he can get beat up a little bit. Now, he's shown that he's tough and he'll fight through it, but he can get banged up a little bit. And so you don't want that to happen for him. I think he's got a lot of the tools that can make him successful in the NFL. I like him as an NFL draft prospect more than I liked Nate Peterman coming out of Pitt, because of his mobility. I like him more as a draft prospect than Tom Savage. Because of his play on the field, I like him more as a draft prospect than Tino Sinceri or Bill Stahl. I'm just going back through the recent pick quarterbacks. I guess Peterman was the one who was really talked about as an NFL guy, and he obviously has made an NFL career. I like Pickett better than I liked Peterman coming out. But if Pickett's career ends up being like Peterman, he's a career backup, it's not the worst thing. You get some money. You know what I mean? You get paid pretty well to be a career backup. Now, if you get drafted in the first round, you're not getting drafted to be a career backup. But if that's where Pickett ends up, it might be considered a disappointment, but it's not the worst outcome. To your question, do I think Kenny Pickett's a franchise quarterback in the NFL? I think he can be one, but I think some circumstances have to come together for it. Now, Michael B's second question is Jeff Capel coaching his way off the hot seat. So much of this is game to game. You know what I mean? Like you would not have asked me this question last week after the Syracuse game. If we did this show on Thursday night, you would not have asked this question on Thursday night. If we did it if we did this show after the Syracuse game, you would not have asked me, is Jeff Capel coaching his way off the hot seat? Because, we'd be talking about how bad they were and how much they struggled and how much his team collapses. And if even if they win a couple games here going into the end of the month, if they have a rough February, which they have had in the past for different reasons, I think, but if they have a rough stretch, to kind of close the regular season that like they've had in the past, then you're not going to be talking about whether he's coaching his way off the hot seat. For right now, in the wake of the win, yes. I'm kind of the mind that barring an abject disaster, which means more than just losing games, but some terrible things happening, I'm of the mind that Jeff Capel's probably back next season. I'm actually at a point where I'd be surprised if he wasn't back next season. I'm at the point where it would take something extreme to cause him not to be back next season. But even more than that, and I mean we can I guess we can kind of start a basketball conversation here. I'm kind of, this isn't a terrible coaching job by Jeff Capel this year. This is maybe one of his better coaching jobs. As much as we want to take a hard line and say it's year 4, you don't get excuses. You don't get to make excuses for anything. We're not going to rationalize anything. You are 100% responsible for the results on the court. And I agree with that. As much as we want to say all those things, the reality is the losses of Ethiel Horton and Nike Sabandi, no matter whose fault they are, no matter how those losses came to be, are significant. And no matter what you think about Horton, and no matter what you think it's about Sabandi, and where you would rank them, they wouldn't even start for 10 other ACC teams or any of that. All of that's inconsequential. What's relevant is what their role is with this team, and what their role is expected to be with this team, and how they would fit in with this team. Okay? And they were expected to be significant players on this team. And injuries happen, these things happen, you might lose a guy here or there, but to lose 2 top 5 guys, maybe top 3, although the way, let's just say top 5, okay? Because, right now, you're looking at your top player, you have John Hughley, Jamarius Burton has played himself into maybe your second best player right now. Horton and Sabandi would be in there somewhere, mixed into that top 3, somewhere in the top 5. Significant players, top contributors, guys that you are expecting to play a lot of minutes for you, to contribute a lot of offense for you, to be leaders for you, to be some of your best players. And to take them out of the mix on a team that didn't exactly have a plethora of talent to begin with. Didn't exactly have a plethora of depth to begin with. And we've said this from the very start. Look, this was a team that was always going to be offensively challenged. This was a team that was always going to be thin. This was a team that was always going to have some depth issues and have to play the top guys a lot of minutes. This was always going to be the case. With Horton and Sabandi, it was going to be the case. And then you cut those 2 legs out, it becomes a real challenge. Now, that doesn't excuse getting your butt kicked by the Citadel. That doesn't excuse losing to UMBC. That doesn't excuse, losing to Syracuse like they did. You need to be better than you were in some of those games. But I think when you look at the close losses they've had, the 1-point losses, we don't need to switch the results of Syracuse and West Virginia and the Citadel. Keep those on the books. You earned those losses. They were beat downs. You earned it. Keep those on the books. Okay? But just some of the 1-point losses, some of the close losses, you know what I mean? Minnesota, Virginia, those were both 1-point losses. What was the other one? Oh, Notre Dame. Notre Dame 1-point loss. Louisville 3-point losses. I think it's sort of intellectually dishonest if you sit there and just flat out say, no way, Horton and Sabandi wouldn't have made a difference in those games. I mean, that's just, like I say, I think you've already decided that you hate Jeff Capel and that he's a failure if you say that, because the reality is those guys absolutely could have changed the outcomes of those games. Would they? I don't know. But that's 4 games we're talking about that were decided by what? A total of 6 points? They're changing the outcome of at least a couple of them. And then we're talking about a different situation. You know what I mean? Instead of 7-10, we're talking about 9-8. Instead of 2-4, maybe we're talking about 4-2 in the ACC. And we've got a different perspective on this team. We've got a different perspective on these players. And we've got a different perspective on this coach. That kind of what he talked about prior to the season, about chemistry, about building the locker room, about trying to build a culture this year, and focusing on the culture aspect of the team this year, that it might actually be working. We would have that different perspective when there are 2 things that happen out of Jeff Capel's control. All right? You can't blame him for Nike Sabandi getting hurt. Well, you shouldn't have been playing in an exhibition game. Well, they all played in the exhibition game. You're playing all your guys. Your point, the goal is to get ready for the season. It's a freak thing. It's an injury. Injuries happen. But it's not the fault of the coach. The Horton situation, I mean, by all accounts, it's an out-of-character incident that doesn't really jive with who he has been in pretty much every other situation. And so, kind of through no fault of his own, Jeff Capel lost these 2 guys. And I think that's had a significant impact. And so you take that into consideration, and then you look at the success they've been able to have. And at 7-10, 2-4, have you had a ton of success? No. But those 4 games that were lost by 6 points, the wins that they've been able to get, whether it was St. John's or whether it was, Boston College at this Louisville game, I think and the way they've kept coming back, because all those 1-point losses weren't just like Pitt made a basket at the end to cut it to 1. I mean, I think every one of those 1-point losses, Pitt had the lead and lost it on the final basket. And Jeff Capel has used that word gut punch a lot, and I think it takes a lot to keep coming back from those types of losses. Emotionally, I think it takes a lot. I think those kind of losses can take something out of you and make it harder to get back up off the mat and come back and fight the next day. And then you add in the fact that all the, some of the top guys are all playing like 30 minutes a game, 34 minutes a game, 39 minutes a game, 40 minutes. Physically, you're going to get worn down, but they keep coming back and they keep fighting and they keep battling. And it's first and foremost a testament to the players. It's credit to the players for coming back and fighting like that. But it's a testament to the coaches too. I think you have to give some credit to Jeff Capel and his staff there. So I think this is the best coaching job he's done so far. And again, we're talking about a team that's won 2 games in the ACC. But I think when you put all the circumstances together, you look at what Jeff Capel has worked with, I mean, it's hard not to say, to put at least a little bit of respect on it. And I think you can also talk yourself into a few more wins here down the stretch of the ACC. When you look at how the ACC is right now and how it's been all season, it's not a strong conference. There's not really all that much depth in terms of good teams. There's Duke. And then, I guess Miami, the last I checked here on Tuesday night, Miami was killing North Carolina. I don't know if that outcome has changed. I haven't checked it since we started the podcast, but you don't really have a whole lot. This conference could get like less than 5 teams into the NCAA tournament this year. When's the last time the ACC could say that? That's bad for the conference, but it's good if you're Pitt and a team that needs every advantage they can get to pile up a couple wins, just to put together something approaching a respectable record. Well, this might be an opportunity for them to do it in a year when they're shorthanded, when they weren't going to be the most talented team in the conference anyway. Maybe there's an opportunity to go out there and do what they want to do this year, which is play ugly, drag teams down to the mud. These are Jeff Capel's phrases. This might be a good year to do that. When you don't have this, abundance of super talented teams with lottery picks, this might be the kind of year where you can go out and kind of night after night drag teams down to the mud and come out and win a few of those games when you play like that. What was this game against Louisville? 65-53? That's what Pitt needs to look like. I keep doing dumb stuff like predicting Pitt to win games like 70-62. They're not going to get into 70 most games unless it goes to a couple overtimes. And that's okay because that's how they want to play. And it's not even just how they want to play, it's how they have to play. It's how this team has to play in order to win this year. And like I say, I think this might be a good year in the ACC for them to have some success playing that way. There have been years in the ACC where they weren't going to be able to win a lot of games playing if that's how they had to play or that's how they wanted to play. This year might be a year where you can pull it off. Look what they just did to Louisville. That's not a typical Louisville team. I think the bloom is off the rose with Chris Mack. But, most Louisville teams, you can't play them like that and expect to win. This year you can. And I think that's going to be the case against a bunch of these ACC teams. Look, Pitt almost beat Virginia in Virginia. And so they're going to get them at the Peterson Event Center on Wednesday night. And I think, again, drag them down to the mud, make them play dirty and ugly with your way, the way you want to play, and see if you can out ugly them. And it's funny to watch this team too. I was thinking about this on Saturday during the Louisville game. There's John Hughley, right? And he's awesome. He's great. He's a great player. Jeff Capel said after the Notre Dame game that he really felt like if John Hughley played hard, he could foul out every one of Notre Dame's big guys. And I think that really is the game plan. Somebody, I forget who on Twitter, I would give him credit if I could remember. Somebody on Twitter was like, Pitt leads the country in free throw attempts or is top 5 in the country in free throw attempts. It's because Hughley's getting fouled constantly. And it's not because teams want to hack him because he's a pretty good free throw shooter. It's because of the way he plays and he's initiating that contact. And I think that's a great way for Pitt to play. You know what I mean? Of we're just going to bang into you all the time and you're going to get called for fouls a lot of these times and we're going to go to the free throw line and see what we can do there, but we're going to make it ugly. We're going to make it physical. We're going to make high contact. You know what I mean? We're going to initiate the contact. But going back to my point here. So I was watching the game on Saturday and John Hughley's, great. He's playing at a really high level, and it's fun to watch. He's clearly their best player. He's the best thing they have going offensively. But I found myself asking during this game on Saturday, and I'll ask you this question. What does this Pitt team do well offensively? Like, what is this Pitt team's, what do they do well offensively? And can you answer that question without mentioning John Hughley? And I'm not just, I'm not, like, that's the obvious answer, right? What they do well offensively is they feed it down to Hughley, and he either gets a foul or lays it in. And you can win a lot of games playing that way. But it just occurred to me as I was watching, I was like, I don't really know what they're doing. I don't really know what they're trying to do, and I don't really know what I even want them to do. Our guy Steven Gertz, does great basketball analysis for us on Panther-Lair.com, and he can break down, what they do with this or that or the screens and things like that. But just as a random jagoff watching the game, I'm just like, what is even the objective here? And not even this in the sense of like, I don't understand the plays they're running. It's like if I could sit back and say, well, they should try and get the ball to this guy so he can do this thing. I don't even know what I would say. You know what I mean? Like, how do you fill in the blanks? Pitt's best offense, when it's not just getting the ball to John Hughley. So let's say Pitt's second best offensive attack or approach is when they get the ball to blank so he can do blank. How do you fill in the blanks? Like, what are the answers there? Because it seems to me, and it was interesting to watch that Louisville game because Pitt got up, they were up 16, 17, or they were up in the teens, and Louisville would cut it down to like 10, and Pitt would come down at the other end and make a play. But usually the play, I think maybe once they got a Mo 3, a Mo 3, as some are inclined to say. But a lot of times, like, the play, the thing they did to sort of stop Louisville's run was just Jamarius Burton just drive into the basket, or Femi Odikale drive into the basket and laying it in or drawing a foul. And that kind of seemed to be the whole game plan. That seems to be the only thing that really works. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's the offense, is just either kick it down low or drive and lay it in, or drive and kick. And that's it. Maybe that's sort of the extent of it. But I just found myself thinking about that of like, what do they do well? Like, not that I expect them to be a great offensive team, but like, what's the strength here other than Hughley? What's the strength? Now, Jamarius Burton seems to be emerging as a strength. He's played well lately. I think as the season has gone on, he had that injury that kept him out for a while to open the season. Took him a little while to get going once he actually got back on the court. I think he's been playing really well and emerging as a leader. Jeff Capel talked about him being really strong on the court, looking strong on the court, and really kind of establishing himself as a leader in the huddle, as a leader when they're out trying to make the offense go. He wants to take over games. He wants to take shots. He wants the ball. And so I think that's emerging as a pretty good source of offense for this team. I think Burton's emergence has allowed Femi Odikale to settle into a role that I think is more fitting for him. I think Odikale, particularly early in the season, was expected to and was expecting himself to do a lot of things that Jamarius Burton is doing now, and try to sort of have that take over the game mentality. And I'm not sure if that's really him. I'm not sure if it's him at this point. Maybe it can become him down the road, but I don't know that it's him right now. But as Burton has emerged, Odikale's been able to settle into more of a role as a facilitator, settle into more of a role of, even sometimes playing off the ball. I think he's gotten into a good role for him. He can pick and choose when he's going to attack, instead of feeling like he has to be the one that attacks on every play or every possession. And so I think he's done well in that role. I think Burton emerging has allowed that to happen. They went with more of a 3-guard lineup, or used a 3-guard lineup more often on Saturday after they put Onibuchi Iziakudo on scholarship. He went into the starting lineup with Odikale and Burton, along with Mogi and John Hughley. And that seemed to work pretty well. I asked Jeff Capel about that after the game, and he said that, yeah, they feel good about that lineup. They feel good about using 3 guards that, kind of brought up some numbers, some plus-minus things that have worked well for them all season, that they do well when they've got that 3-guard lineup out there. Take some of the pressure off Odekale, take some of the pressure off Burton. Not that Easy Ikuto is bringing the ball up every time or running the offense or anything like that, but just having another guy out there who can do it. Now, obviously, the equal and opposite reaction to putting Easy Ikuto in the starting lineup is they took Will Jeffers out of the starting lineup. He only played 9 minutes in that game, but Jeffers has been struggling. And so, I think Jeff Capel has shown he's got to be willing to toy with things, and he's got to be willing to make changes when changes are needed. And, I still think the world of Will Jeffers' ceiling and his potential, but he hasn't been playing up to that level this season. And if Easy Ikuto gives them a better chance, if things move a little bit better with him on the court, and I think there are things that, I think he's got his ups and downs just like Jeffers has his ups and downs. But if Capel likes the group of 5 better with the 3 guards, then that's the move. And I think that'll be the starting lineup again on Wednesday night against Virginia, because it did seem to work pretty well in the game against Louisville. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Nate Santos got 9 minutes. He made a couple threes in the Syracuse game, played 9 minutes against Louisville. We'll see if his role can kind of increase here down the stretch. You get to a point, and sometimes it's when the conference season starts, sometimes it's mid-January or even into February, and a lot of coaches will say things like, well, the freshmen aren't really freshmen anymore. They're sophomores now. In our mind, they've had enough experience. They're sophomores now. It'll be interesting to see if a guy like Nate Santos starts taking some steps forward. Jeff Capel had some comments after the Syracuse game where he talked about okay, sure, Nate Santos made 2 threes, but we have him every day in practice. We have him throughout, all the time, and he needs to make improvements there before he's going to get more time on the court. And it'll be interesting to see if Santos takes some of that to heart or makes some of those improvements that he needs to make outside of games in order to get himself more time in the games. And I think if he can make those improvements, he should be able to develop a role in the offense. He's the best shooter on the team. Certainly the best available shooter on the team with Ethiel Horton still suspended. Even when Horton comes back, I think Santos is probably the best pure shooter on the team. And when I watched him during his 9 minutes, when he was on the court in the Louisville game, he was open. They just weren't really passing to him. Of course, I sent a tweet about that. I said, boy, I wonder how many times Nate Santos is going to stand by himself in the corner before somebody passes to him. And literally the next possession, they passed to him in the corner. He took a 3 and totally airballed it. It was a corner 3, and it just went over the rim. It didn't even touch the rim. I was like, well, at least they tried. But I got to think, I know he's a better shooter than that. And I think if you keep him on the court, he's going to get more comfortable out there and get more opportunities. And then he just needs a couple to go down, and I think he's going to grow. His confidence will grow. And I think you'll see him improve. But it'll be interesting to see if that happens this season or not. I'm not entirely sure. But really, it's going to come down to a lot of what it's been so far. It's going to come down to John Hughley staying out of foul trouble and impacting the opponents that way, causing them to get fouls. And then, Mo Gee doing what Mo Gee does, blocking shots, making threes, driving sometimes, put back baskets, rebounding, and then Jamarius Burton and the guards. I like how this team has come together. They're not going to be a great team. They're not going to be a high-scoring team. I like how they've come together and sort of identified their roles, which I think are really coming into focus here in the last couple weeks. I like how they've identified their roles, settled into their roles, and how the players seem to be committing to this idea of playing ugly, of drawing teams down into the mud. And Jeff Capel keeps saying it, and I think I'm glad. I don't want him to back off that because it seems like it's their best option, and the players seem to have bought into it. Excuse me. And I think if they keep buying into it, they're going to have chances to get to keep piling up wins. You know what I mean? I think they're going to have chances to keep stacking up some wins. All right, let's scroll in here. See what some of the questions, comments. There's a lot of chatter here, but got I don't even know what you guys are talking about in some of the live stream comments. I don't know if I might skip over a few. All right, let's roll through here. Jake Pagliaro says, yo, Chris, Pitt basketball, not that bad in my opinion. Steal a couple road games, and we can find ourselves maybe in the middle of the pack. Oh, and Kenny Pickett over Matt Corral all in the draft all day. It's interesting. I saw, who was it, Mark Packer? Packer and Durham, morning ACC network show, kind of like a talk show they do every morning. I think he had Pitt at like 9th in his ACC basketball power ranking. It's not, the conference isn't good this year. And there are a lot of teams kind of floating around that middle to bottom area. And it's like I said, I think it's a perfect opportunity for a team like Pitt to go muck it up and, mess around and win a few games. Absolutely. Big Cliff says, I'm thinking about Frank Cignetti's use of Doran Dickerson after Gavin Bartholomew. Is Cole Mitchell the second tight end that can create the mismatches and be used like Doran Dickerson was? So the tight ends are going to be interesting to watch this year. First of all, we were talking about how Frank Cignetti used Doran Dickerson in 2009. The first thing you have to understand is Doran Dickersons don't grow on trees. It's hard to find a guy like Doran Dickerson. He was a freak. All right. And it's a total indictment on the Pitt coaching staff from 2006 to 2008 that they couldn't figure out the way to use him. 2006, he's a freshman. He comes in, he's hurt, moves around to running back and receiver, burns his red shirt because then, back in 2006, you burned your red shirt when you played in one game. His first play was like an up man on a kickoff return team. It was a total waste. There was no point for Doran Dickerson to ever see the field as a freshman in 2006. And I think Doran has since acknowledged that. Then in 2007, they moved him to linebacker because, as Dave Wannstedt said, man, that's exactly what you want an NFL linebacker to look like. His size and his height and weight and speed and all this stuff. 2008, they move him to tight end, which is ultimately a great place for him to play because he gets tons of good matchups and could just kill guys, and they barely used him. It was a disaster. And it was such a waste. Finally, in 2009, after 4 years, 3 wasted years, in his 4th year, they get somebody who comes in and says, what are we doing here? We've got this freak of nature, and we're not using him. And so Doran Dickerson ends up catching like 10 touchdown passes because he was insane. He was insanely good. It made no sense for him to be so unused and misused over his first 3 years. Now, Pitt doesn't have a guy like Doran Dickerson on the roster this year. Most schools don't have a guy like Doran Dickerson on the roster. Doran Dickerson, as I say, was a freak of nature. Probably still is. He could probably beat most of us in a race, I would think. Anybody on this podcast right now would probably still lose in a race to Doran Dickerson, who at this point is probably like 33, 34 years old, somewhere around there. Doran would still beat all of us in a race, beat all of us in the bench press, probably beat all of us in like a push-up competition. Any athletic feat, that you want to compete against Doran Dickerson, he would probably still beat us all. He would probably still beat most of the guys on Pitt's roster. And that's not a knock on them. It's just because Doran is and was a freak. So I don't know if there's a guy. No, I know there's not a guy on the current roster who can be used like Doran Dickerson because Doran was such a unique specimen. Now, what's going to be interesting is to see if Frank Cignetti wants to use 2 tight end sets. They obviously return Gavin Bartholomew. He's the stud. He's the freshman All-American. He's the guy who's going to be the number 1 tight end this year. I think he's going to get the ball a lot. I think they're going to throw to him a lot, and they should because he makes plays. For the second tight end, though, you got like Kmar Mims coming back. You've got Kai Wright coming back. You've got the 2 guys who were freshmen this year, Jake Renda and Cole Mitchell. I don't, Big Cliff picked Cole Mitchell as the one. I don't know about him. I don't know about Jake Renda. I don't know about Wright. I don't know about Mims. I'm not sure. We've seen Pitt now offer or begin the pursuit of, what's his name? Steven Stylianos, tight end from Lafayette College, who went into, is it Lafayette College, Lafayette University? We'll just say Lafayette. Tight end from Lafayette who went into the transfer portal last month. He's got a bunch of, I know you might initially sort of shrug about a Lafayette guy as a target, but he's got a bunch of Power 5 offers, Rutgers, Virginia, Syracuse after him, a bunch of Group of 5 schools, a bunch of FCS schools. He is better than that level. You know what I mean? He's good enough to be a Power 5 tight end, and that's why these schools are after him. Pitt is looking into him as well. And so I think they want some depth at the tight end position. I think if you remember, we had a podcast a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and we talked about holes on the roster for 2022. And there's not a lot. There's not a lot of holes that really jump out. A second tight end is one of them, which is pretty remarkable when you're talking about, a second tight end is one of your like top 3 holes on the roster. You got a pretty good roster if that's the case. But they do need a second tight end, whether it's a guy on the current roster to step up or bringing in a transfer like this Steven Stylianos. They need someone else to step up behind Gavin Bartholomew, provide a little bit of depth. Now, I don't know who that's going to be, but I think Gavin Bartholomew is your number one guy. He's the one who's going to get the most action out there. Hail to Pitt says, does Jeff Capel have any options left for the 2022 class, or is he just waiting on the transfer portal during the offseason? I would say both. They're going to have at least 2 spots to work with this offseason. I think they might try to get a guy in the class of 2022 to come in, and then maybe one, and then fill up the rest with transfer options, guys who can come in and help. A little bit older who can maybe step into the rotation right away next season. So if they end up with 3 spots, I wouldn't be surprised if they get one recruit and 2 transfers, or 1 recruit and 1 transfer, and go with an empty scholarship spot again. Kind of depends on how many openings that they have, but I do think Capel has some guys they're monitoring and keeping an eye on in 2022 class that they'll try and bring. Let's see here. Hail to Pitt says, or no, Hail to Pitt, I just read you. Joe News says, Chris, why does Pitt move so slow with contracts and positions, referencing the Pat Narduzzi extension, the offensive coordinator, the wide receiver coach, etc.? I think there's a couple things. First of all, Pat Narduzzi sort of sets his own pace for finding an offensive coordinator. I think that's probably where the first bit of consternation comes from. He's generally moved at his own pace. If you want to call it slowly, you can call it slowly. I don't think that's inappropriate or inaccurate, I should say. He moves at his own pace on finding a guy. Yeah, I think as far as this current hire, Frank Signetti, I think he said, yeah, I'll do it probably last Thursday. But then you get through the weekend, a 3-day weekend with Martin Luther King Day yesterday on Monday. You have to go through the whole HR process, the university clearances and paperwork. I think it's just, like, a lot of people have asked why there hasn't been an official announcement yet. And every indication I have is that it's just paperwork, paperwork. I think Frank Signetti's in. I think he's excited to be back at Pitt. And I think everybody's excited to have him at Pitt. It's just, a matter of crossing the T's, I guess, dotting the I's, signing the papers. As for a wide receiver coach, I think once Signetti's in place, he'll have input on finding a receiver coach. I imagine he already has some input on finding a receiver coach, and I think they'll move forward then. The Pat Narduzzi contract extension is a little more curious. I'm not sure why that hasn't happened yet. I don't know if, there's part of me that wonders if Narduzzi held off on a contract extension because he wanted to find an offensive coordinator and see what it would take to hire that offensive coordinator so he could then work that into his extension. I think a big part of the contract extension that's going to come for Pat Narduzzi, and I think it will come this offseason, obviously years. You want to extend beyond the 2024 that he's currently going through, that his contract currently goes through. But I think a big part of it is going to be, and and rightfully so, getting more money for the assistant coaching staff. You know what I mean? Getting more money for the assistant coaching budget, in addition to recruiting budget and facilities and all those other things that come with contract extensions. So maybe Narduzzi wanted to hold off on doing the contract extension until he could get the offensive coordinator lined up, find out what he needs to hire that guy in case it was going to cost more or whatever, and then work that into the budget that he, negotiates with, on the new contract extension. Either way, it should happen. Cignetti should be announced, I would think, this week, and they'll move forward from there. Let's see here. Scrolling down, a lot of just you guys arguing with each other, and that's always fun. Hope you guys have fun with that debate. Let's see what else. Now, Pete K's got an update. Miami beat North Carolina 85-57. So that's yeah, Miami is apparently one of the better teams in the conference this year. That's wild. Let's see here. I mean, it's not wild. I think they've done a good job. And that's been a team that they've been dangerous in the past. Last year was a weird year. I think Pitt beat them last year, right? But I mean, last year was a weird year with the COVID year and guys being out and that kind of thing. So I don't think too much about that. But I feel like Miami and Florida State are sort of teams that are going to be competitive in most years. I'm not really sure what Florida State's up to this year. But yeah, Miami looks like they're emerging as one of the better teams in the conference, kind of right behind Duke. It's probably Duke and then Miami at this point. I don't know. We'll have to see. I think the conference picture will come more into focus over the next month or so, I would say. Football wise, they got a new commitment. Pat Narduzzi got a commitment from Shane Simon, a linebacker from Notre Dame. Actually, Anthony Tennyson just asked, "Hey Chris, can you tell us more about the transfer that came in over the weekend?" And that's actually what I was just about to talk about, Tony. So good on you for being on the same wavelength as me. That worked out well. But Shane Simon, linebacker from Notre Dame, committed over the weekend as a transfer. Interesting guy, former 4-star prospect out of New Jersey, who signed with Notre Dame, had a bunch of offers, and I think when there's a 4-star prospect in New Jersey, you get sort of the standard run of offers: Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and that's what Shane Simon had. He ended up signing with Notre Dame. He played all 4 seasons at Notre Dame. He was in the class of 2018, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, class of 2018. Played all 4 seasons at Notre Dame. Started like 8 games in 2020 when Notre Dame was in the ACC for a season last year, the COVID year. This past season, I don't think he was projected to be a starter, but he was going to be like a 2-deep player, a rotational guy. He was going to get on the field a lot. He got hurt, suffered a shoulder injury in the first game of the season, missed the rest of the year, and then decided to go into the transfer portal. By all indications, Notre Dame is pretty loaded at linebacker, and Shane Simon felt like he could find a better opportunity down the road. The first thing that's interesting about Shane Simon is eligibility. So because he played all 4 years, he never took a red shirt. Because he only played in 1 game this past season, 2021, he could apply his red shirt to that season. So he actually will come to Pitt as a redshirt senior in 2022 with the option to use a super senior year of eligibility for 2023. So he's really got 2 years to play. So that's kind of the first thing. And I think you always have to sort of determine eligibility. And that's always one of the more interesting things to consider when you're looking at these guys. Now, Shane Simon, as a linebacker and as a player, sort of how he fits into Pitt's defense, he's kind of the opposite of Michael Dowell. Because this news also came late in the week. I don't think we've done a show since this. Michael Dowell, the transfer linebacker from Michigan State, had a medical issue. Got to campus, was on campus, I think he'd started classes, and Pitt's doctors wouldn't clear him to play. So it's unfortunate. This has happened before. Malik Newton, most recently, Zach Gilbert and George Hill. Prior to that, where Pitt's doctors say, we can't clear you for one issue or another. Medically, we can't clear you. Michigan State had no issue with him playing. Pitt's doctors have a different standard. And is Pitt too strict? I don't know. I think it's in the interest of safety, and so I have a hard time coming down too hard on them about it when it's in the interest of player safety. So Michael Dowell went back into the transfer portal, said I want to play, and I'll find a school that'll let me play. Malik Newton found West Virginia State, I think it is, that let him play. And Zach Gilbert found a couple of schools. I think he ended up finally at Robert Morris, I think was his final school, and they were, other schools would let him play. So they lose Michael Dowell, and then they add Shane Simon, but it wasn't really a 1-for-1 deal. It wasn't really a trade. There's been some suggestion that, Michael Dowell left because he heard they were bringing in Shane Simon. Well, no, that wasn't really the case. And I don't think they brought in Shane Simon to replace Michael Dowell because they're different players. Dowell was more of the hybrid safety linebacker. And that's kind of what he did at Michigan State. Michigan State listed him as a safety, but he really kind of played like an outside linebacker position, covering the slot, playing to the wide side of the field, like the star linebacker position in Pitt's defense. Right? Pitt runs a 4-3 defense. You have your middle linebacker, and then you have your two outside linebackers, the star and the money. I know Pat Narduzzi's been here for 8 years now, but I feel like we can still explain this every now and then. So you have the star linebacker and the money linebacker. Star linebacker plays the field side, the wide side of the field. And it's almost like a hybrid safety. You know what I mean? A safety playing in the box. It's kind of what it is. Almost to the point where the personnel is almost like a 4-2-5. Except he's still a linebacker. He's got run game responsibilities and that kind of thing. So you've got that linebacker position, and that guy's going to be a little bit faster. He's going to be probably a little bit smaller. Phil Campbell, converted safety, playing outside linebacker. John Patrician, converted safety, plays that outside linebacker position, that star linebacker position. I think Elijah Zeiss did that for a little while. I think Sean Idowu, if you remember back a few years ago, played that spot. And then there's the money linebacker, which is the short side of the field, the boundary side. And that is more of a blitzing linebacker. It's a guy who's going to be a little bit bigger. Chase Pine played that role. Cam Bright, who was a good blitzer, played that role. So you have two, and they're really different types of players. And you have some guys like Servassier Dennis who can play all the linebacker spots. And Servassier Dennis really can play any one of the three, which gives them some flexibility in how they line up this year. But for the most part, you're going to have some guys who are star linebackers and some guys who are money linebackers. And they're not really the same kinds of players. And Michael Dowell was a star, and Shane Simon is a money. That's how he's going to fit into Pitt's defense. He's a money linebacker. Maybe middle linebacker, but I don't even think so. I think he's almost exclusively going to be a money linebacker, and that seems to be a good role for him. A bigger, athletic linebacker who can blitz really well, play good against the run. I think that's a good spot for Michael Dowell, or for Shane Simon. And so it wasn't really a trade. It's not really a trade of Dowell for Simon. It's I think they each fill different spots in Pitt's defense. Would they have taken both guys? I don't think so. But and I'd have to kind of do a little more investigation into the timeline of when they really started pushing for Simon, if it came after the issue with Dowell or what it was. But I don't really look at it as a trade between the two. I think this is where this is how Simon will fit in, is as that money linebacker. And we know they need depth. They need numbers at linebacker. I would expect Simon to be a starting money linebacker this year, which means they need to fill the other two spots, middle and star. And it might end up being, if they feel good about Brandon George playing middle linebacker, and that's really been his spot since he got to Pitt, it really might end up being Servassier Dennis sliding out to the star linebacker. I like him at middle linebacker. I think it took him a little while to get comfortable at that position, to start the season in 2021, but I think by the end of the year, he's playing really, really well at middle linebacker. But I could see if they feel like Brandon George is one of the 3 best linebackers, then Servassier Dennis is versatile enough that he can slide out to star linebacker, and you would start Shane Simon, Brandon George, and Servassier Dennis. And then you rotate in Bengali Kamara, and you rotate in Solomon DeShields, and you rotate in maybe some of the younger guys as well. They don't have a ton of depth at linebacker this year. They're going to have to ride with some of the younger guys. It's not like last year. They've lost 7 linebackers from the opening day roster, from the starting roster in 2021. They've lost 7 linebackers. Like 3 of them ran out of eligibility. Phil Campbell and Chase Pine and John Patrician. The other 4 were all transfers. Wendell Davis and A.J. Roberts and Leslie Smith, Cam Bright. That's a lot of numbers to lose from the roster from one year to the next. So you're going to have some depth issues there. But Shane Simon, I think, helps with that. I think Shane Simon helps fill some of those depth issues because, as a veteran guy who should come in and be ready to play. And I think the expectation is that they'll have him on campus for the spring semester. It's, I think they're still kind of working through that. You got to get it done soon, though, because the spring semester actually already started at Pitt. Let's see here. Still arguing about the contract and whether or not Frank Cignetti is going to be the offensive coordinator. And I don't think any delay in making an official announcement should cause any concern about that. But who are we if we don't get concerned about things with Pitt, right? All right. I appreciate everybody jumping in here on a Tuesday night. It was, I know we had to switch up the nights here. I forget if Pitt, let me see. Next week, all right. Next week we'll be able to be back on, next week we'll be able to be back on our Wednesday night because Pitt plays Syracuse on Tuesday night. So we will be back on Wednesday night, but then we'll have to switch it up the following week because they are at Wake Forest on Wednesday night, February 2nd. So we'll be all over the place. They play at Florida State on February 9th. That's a Wednesday night. Oh, they got a bunch of Wednesday night games. So we'll be back and forth between Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights. Look, here's the easiest way to know it, okay? If you're not sure when we're going to be on or when the live stream is going to be, if Pitt has a game on Wednesday night, we're doing it on Tuesday night. If they don't have a game on Wednesday night, we'll do the live stream on Wednesday night. And that's just kind of what it'll be. We'll go off the basketball schedule. We'll do Wednesdays unless there's a game. If there's a game, we'll go Tuesdays. All right? Easy enough, right? I'll tweet it a lot. You can make sure we follow there at Panther-Lair, Pantherlair on Twitter. And, of course, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, Pantherlaircom, Panther-Lair.com, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get a notification when we're going to go live. I'll get the thing fired up early so everybody knows that it's starting at 8:30, and you'll never miss a live stream. So even like last week on Thursday, when the news came about Frank Cignetti getting hired, Thursday or Friday or whatever day it was, we went live, and you didn't miss it. If you were subscribing to the YouTube channel, you got a notification. You knew we were going live, sort of spur of the moment to talk about that news. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Go check out Homefield, homefieldapparel.com. It's just great gear. It's great t-shirts and great sweatshirts. And who doesn't love a great t-shirt? And who doesn't love a great sweatshirt, right? Who doesn't love it? Homefieldapparel.com. If it's your first time shopping there, use the promo code LAIR, LAIR. You get 15% off your first order. So you get great Pitt shirts, you get great Pitt sweatshirts, and you get a discount. Promo code LAIR, LAIR. Okay, make sure you are subscribed to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You get all the best up-to-date coverage of Pitt sports right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and of course message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans, Panther-Lair.com. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in on the live stream here on a Tuesday night. Appreciate everybody who listens to the podcast through the week. And, of course, the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan, Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. You can tune into that. That's always fun. And, yeah, I think that's just about it. So we'll be back next week. I forget what I just said, if we'll be back Wednesday or Tuesday night. But if there's a basketball game Wednesday night, we'll be back on Tuesday. If there's no game on Wednesday night, we'll be back on Wednesday. That's the easiest way to remember it. So have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the game on Saturday night, or Wednesday night.